Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. So today is Wednesday, December 5th, 2018, and today we're going to go through a 2020 presidential election prediction between Senator Elizabeth Warren and President Donald Trump. For a second there, I thought I said President Elizabeth Warren. But today, we're going to be looking at a completely blank electoral map. In my more recent videos, I have decided to fill in the map with the 270 to win expanding battleground map that's provided to us. Unfortunately, this time, I didn't think it was necessary, but a lot of you guys did like that, considering that it went through and prevented me from actually going through a number of safe states. So I'm going to get through this pretty quickly, starting right now. So I'm going to use safe and toss-up in terms of safe states, obviously, being able to clearly make a clear distinction as to where these states would go in terms of margins. Comment down below if you guys actually want me to still use margins. I really have no clue as to what you guys specifically want to see. It's usually around probably like 60-40 of people favoring me using margins, but if anything has changed and you guys collectively want me to just use safe and toss up, then I'm fine with that. But again, all up to what you guys want to see. Of course, I'm going to explain them the same way. It's just going to be a little bit different in terms of how I show you the map, I guess. But the reasoning will still be there. I'll probably still mention the margins if you guys don't want me to keep it. But if you do, then, of course, nothing to worry about. So Elizabeth Warren jumping up there with 182 electoral votes, Donald Trump with 125, leaving 231 contested electoral votes. To be completely honest with you, this is probably the worst standing map the GOP has had for a while. They said the same thing in 2016, so that's nothing against the president. We're looking at a map that hasn't benefited the Republican Party because there are so many toss-up states. Look at states like Arizona, states like Texas, and states like Georgia. If we took the 2012 Romney states, that would include North Carolina, and gave them all to Donald Trump, he would already be at 205. Unfortunately, every single one of these states has taken a turn more in favor of the Democratic Party in the past 6 years alone. And that is not a good look for the GOP. As for the Democratic Party, though, states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania have all taken more of a lean towards the Republican Party in recent history. But again, those can counteract based off the midterm results. But Florida has been pretty consistent in voting for the GOP, along with North Carolina. Just they may be showing a little bit of warning signs for future elections. So with 125 electoral votes for Donald Trump, where does he make up these numbers? He's probably not going to lose an election with 125 electoral votes. So where do we actually see the real numbers coming in terms of how Trump can just rack it up there and get to a point where he's actually competitive in this election? Because right now, Elizabeth Warren, she isn't too close to the magic number. Right now, as she stands, we're looking at around 88 electoral votes separating Warren and the White House. For Donald Trump, on the other hand, he is about 145 electoral votes away from the 270 to be reelected. And if he does get less than the first time around, which was 306, that means that he would be joining Barack Obama and Woodrow Wilson in the two presidents that won their re-election bids by smaller margins than their first-time elections. But that's not the point of this video. Today we're going to be analyzing close swing states and pretty much just brushing over the entire electoral map. Again, a lot can change 2 years from now, but a lot of you, not really a lot of you, some of you in particular have said that it's too early for me to be making these election predictions. Number one, I've been making them since mid-2017. And yes, I did get complaints then, but honestly, I do think that it's pretty safe to say that these predictions will start to become a little bit better in terms of where these voters are going to go, especially after the 2018 midterms. Before 2018, I could see the argument. I made these for my own, I guess, let's say, I wanted to make these videos. These were videos that I enjoyed making, so I made them, and a lot of you guys did enjoy them, and this content is mainly for you guys. Otherwise, I would probably just make all this content private and just document it for my own sake. But again, if you look at my first ever 2018 Senate election prediction, I was only off by 2 seats compared to the final results. Keep in mind that prediction was made in July of 2017. There's no way I could have known either the range of candidates, the candidates themselves, other than the incumbent Democrats and Republicans, and at that point in time, Alabama wasn't even a blue state in terms of the Senate. So when we look at that, again, I'm not saying that my predictions are somehow better than anyone else's, but I do think that a number of these states are probably going to stay the same as how they vote on election night in around 2 years. So that whole argument that I shouldn't be making videos now, said on CNN, the quote, "If it's not too early for the candidates, it's not too early for us to be talking about it." So 182 electoral votes for Elizabeth Warren, 125 for Donald Trump. Again, where can Trump make up the margin? So first of all, we're going to go ahead and move into the likely leaning and toss-up column. The likely column probably puts Texas more into the likely column. We are looking at a candidate like Elizabeth Warren. Yes, she has some progressive aspects. She's from the state of Massachusetts. In fact, actually, a Democratic primary poll is showing a lot of warning signs for her. She's not doing too well there, and that's her home state. That's where you should be doing the best. John Kasich in Ohio, Ted Cruz in Texas, and this is a state that, yes, under Democratic primary circumstances, things could be different, but if you look back at 2016, Clinton in New York, Sanders in Vermont. We were looking at states in the South, too, where Clinton did phenomenal. Probably not because she's just so close to Arkansas, but probably because of the African-American voters. But just everything worked out in favor of Elizabeth Warren. A number of these states are pretty progressive in the Democratic primary. Not that Hillary Clinton lost these states, but when it came down to primaries in 2018, like in New York or in Florida, or in my home state of Maryland, a lot of these states do sometimes tend to lean towards progressive candidates in the primaries alone. And Elizabeth Warren can't really rally crowds like you see someone like Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump doing, those two quote-unquote political outsiders. Right now, Elizabeth Warren, she isn't really an outsider. Although the same argument could be made for Bernie Sanders, that's not how he's perceived by the country. Elizabeth Warren really isn't that. Yeah, she got into the Senate recently compared to other members who might even run, and looking at this long list, she seems like she's been there for the least amount of time. But again, there's so many arguments you could make against her. Number one, the whole fiasco, especially with Trump calling her Pocahontas. I think a lot of you guys don't necessarily think that name calling is the best resort in politics, but it worked in 2016. This is a candidate that Donald Trump has been fighting against since before he won the election, or Hillary Clinton lost the election. And of course, that's something to note. He's had his eye on her for a really long time, as have Republicans. And, Hillary Clinton didn't directly say it, but there were a few jokes on SNL about Warren not running against Hillary Clinton because it was, quote-unquote, Hillary Clinton's time to shine. So we're looking at a point where Warren necessarily isn't too popular nationwide. She's not even that popular in her home state, which knows the candidate best. So right now, I would see states like Texas and states like Georgia going to the likely column for Donald Trump. Yes, Georgia did narrow down, but keep in mind midterm elections are a little bit better for the Democrats because they have candidate-by-candidate basis for each state. Of course, Stacey Abrams could appeal to Georgia voters more than she could compared to Kirsten Sinema in the state of Arizona. Unfortunately for Democrats, these aren't state-by-state candidates. This is a nationwide candidate. Okay, you take someone like Beto O'Rourke, sure, he'll do better in the Sun Belt. But will he do good in Georgia? You take someone like Kamala Harris. Sure, she'll do better in states like North Carolina and Georgia, but how will she fare in states like Arizona and Texas with heavy Latino populations? So these are nationwide candidates. These are not individual candidates, and that's why I think Warren will probably be the weakest. They probably need to nominate someone like Joe Biden if we're looking at a logical standpoint as to winning an election. There is a point in time where Warren comes up as that sort of new, more progressive tone that's a little bit left-leaning, but not as left as Bernie, not as centrist as Hillary, somewhere right in the middle. And being the first female candidate, that female voting gap definitely comes into play. But right now, Elizabeth Warren, she isn't too popular nationwide, number one, a parallel with Hillary Clinton. She's being a senator, a female senator from the Northeast, another parallel with Hillary Clinton. The only difference is she's not as popular leading into the Democratic primary. Again, if she does win the Democratic primary and wins the election, again, this was 2 years ago. But we're seeing a lot of warning signs, especially before the 2018 midterms, that maybe she shouldn't run. And a lot of other candidates like Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden are likely to make the decision within the next couple of months. So if she's not going to announce running now or within the next month or so, she's probably out of the game, considering that her home state doesn't necessarily want her in. Can't say the same. I mean, you can say the same for the nation. But again, a lot can happen and a lot can change. But for right now, states like New Mexico and Virginia, I would keep in the likely Democratic column. These are states that have been likely Democratic for a pretty long time. And then looking at the state of Maine, that 2nd congressional district, I probably would put in the Warren column along with Maine at large. I think that could likely branch off above that 5% mark into the Warren column. But right now, there are a number of states that we can characterize for Donald Trump. Florida and North Carolina. Yes, Florida just added voter rolls, 1.5 million convicted felons to the voter rolls. But we don't know exactly how they're going to vote or how they're going to impact the electorate or even if they are going to vote. Just because people are able to vote does not mean that they will vote, especially people like that. People that have been disenfranchised by the system for so long, they don't really find a reason to vote, especially if we look at a state like Georgia, where voter suppression seems like it was pretty prominent. I mean, I'm not going to just say which political party was mainly affected, but you all can pretty much interpret that how you will. but it has happened. I mean, it's just a tactic that likely is employed by both political parties, but it goes up in arms depending on whichever political party is in power. And right now, I'm not saying Florida voters were suppressed in any way, but I'm saying that these people that have been previously disenfranchised by the system really don't find a need to vote, which is why a lot of voters are white voters, considering that we have so many, not predominant, but heavy minority population states that should have close elections based off that alone, but don't. States like Mississippi, or possibly Alabama. Georgia is definitely one of them. Texas is definitely one of them. Arizona proved to be different in the 2018 midterms. North Carolina, Florida, these states with minority populations that are pretty large compared to other neighboring whiter states, I guess you could say. And right now, looking at this electoral map, Donald Trump definitely benefits by the lack of minority turnout. Of course, if minority turnout was as high as white voters, states like Texas would be a lot closer. Georgia, closer. North Carolina, blue. Florida, blue. These are states that aren't necessarily the best for Warren to campaign in, number one, because she can't really appeal to them the same way she could maybe in the Rust Belt and better in the Northeast. But still, even if it was some random Democrat, if minority voters do come out and vote, chances are they're going to elect a Democrat. But again, never be so sure about turnout. But 2018 did prove to be a different election. So that'll be something that really is up for a debate. But right now, Colorado, I would put in the likely Democratic column. This is a state that pretty much went pretty well with the Democratic Party in the midterm elections. Nevada, I'm going to keep in the pure toss-up column because I don't exactly know how Trump or Warren will specifically do in that state alone at this point, and it would just be going off on a long tangent about voter turnout, which I've already covered before. Arizona, I'm going to put in the pure toss-up column. I really do not see this election being a blowout for either candidate in terms of the electoral vote count. Second congressional district, I'm not going to make a call in. And a lot of you have been saying this is a prediction for a reason I should make a call in, but I'm not going to call a state like Ohio for Trump, then Pennsylvania for Warren, and then alter that a month from now. I want to keep these states out in the open so I can analyze them a little bit further rather than just jumping into it and then just going with what I have. Because that's what I did in the past in terms of the 2018 midterms. And yes, I was only 2 off, but a presidential election is definitely different. I want to be able to analyze it with you guys and see state changes as they go and not just call states like Ohio likely Republican and then all of a sudden move it into the likely Democratic column the next week because the poll changes. But if you have any more questions, I'll answer them down below. But right now, that's pretty much what I'm going to say about the states itself. And right now, North Carolina, that's not North Carolina. New Hampshire right now, I'm going to keep in the lean Democratic column. I think Warren could do a little bit better there, especially being from the Northeast, and also in a state like Pennsylvania. But Ohio, I'm going to keep in the pure toss-up column. Iowa, I will put in the lean GOP column. Minnesota, I'm going to put in the lean Democratic column. And then these remaining states, Wisconsin and Michigan and Maine 2nd District, I will all put in the pure toss-up column. Now, the reasoning behind this is, number one, I do think Elizabeth Warren will do a little bit better in the Northeast than Hillary Clinton. And again, it's not too hard to outperform her in New Hampshire, considering she won by less than 1%, and it was a very close state. As for the state of Maine, though, this one expands the margin for Elizabeth Warren compared to Hillary Clinton. And that's likely because she is from the state of Massachusetts and definitely can appeal to Northeastern values a lot better than someone who comes from New York but really spends none of her time there. And then Pennsylvania in terms of campaigning. And then Pennsylvania, we're looking at a state that went to Trump in 2016, but I'm going to say that one flips right now. Based off the 2018 midterm election results, along with the state of Minnesota, yes, Minnesota did have some pickups for the GOP. Pennsylvania, likewise. But right now, looking at the states themselves, they still hold a pretty Democratic identity. They had not necessarily good candidates in terms of the state of Pennsylvania, but 2 Senate elections that both went to the Democrats in Minnesota, and then 1 more in Pennsylvania that went to the Democrats. Governorship, Democrat and Democratic. Number of congressmen from either political party. Pennsylvania, I believe, now has more Democrats than Republicans, and there were a number of Democratic pickups in the state of Pennsylvania. Though the GOP did gain some in heavy GOP districts, those were expected. Pennsylvania, not so much. There were a couple of surprises. And looking at the remainder of these states, I am comfortable with those 63 pure toss-up column states being characterized later on. And whether or not you guys want me to fill in every state, I'll probably hear about that tomorrow because, again, I'm going to be doing 3 videos today, and I'm already 14 minutes into this one. So that wraps up today's video. Elizabeth Warren with 246 electoral votes, Donald Trump at 229 and 63 pure toss-up electoral votes. Thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I'll see you all tomorrow.